Hey, happy Saturday. So, sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. I was reading something on Facebook. So I'm rereading The Richest Man in Babylon. And, I read this book right when I was getting out of law school. I was figuring out, how was I going to do my finances, and I had goals. And I read One Up on Wall Street, and I read Beating the Dow, and I read The Richest Man in Babylon. And I followed it, and had I not had my personal growth opportunity with my building, I mean, that just doing that book would have, put me in a even more significant financial position doing that over time. So number one, reread the book. I mean, it's such a great book and such a great story, and has so many great lessons. But one of the things that you got to think about with finances, there's really kind of two schools of thought. And one school of thought is for people who aren't entrepreneurs, and one school of thought is for people who are. Because The Richest Man in Babylon really kind of tells you to not have any debt. And that's kind of the Dave Ramsey approach to things, right? Don't ever have debt, save 10%, do all the stuff, blah, 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 blah. If you are a person who, if you have a job, if you work, so like my dad is a Dave Ramsey guy, and my dad had a job. He worked for the federal government. He was a federal judge. So that makes sense. If you're in that situation, then what Dave Ramsey teaches makes sense. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, then Dave Ramsey's teachings don't make sense. Because as an entrepreneur, you have to have debt. You have to use debt. And one of my mentors taught me this early on. A very successful, completely self-made entrepreneur. Started his company literally out of his garage, one of those things, and has now sold it for a large sum of money. And he went a period of time where he tried to not have debt. And he said, you can't grow without debt. Debt is how you grow. Borrowing money from the bank so that you can go and start a new business or start a new thing is how you grow. Borrowing money from other people, that's how you grow. So as you reread this book, you have to remember, which category do you fit into? Dave Ramsey was on one of the shows the other day, and he said forgiving student loan debt is not going to spur the economy, because those people aren't going to go out and buy other things. Well, I'm not saying I'm for or against getting rid of the student loan debt, but to say that that's not going to spark the economy, well, that you're just not in touch with the people who have student loan debt. Because if all of a sudden they didn't have that student loan debt, they would absolutely go buy things. They would buy cars, they would go buy houses. If they didn't have to make that payment, then they would go buy something because they're used to making that payment. He thinks that they'll take that money and put it into savings. Well, that's what he would do. And that would be very, resourceful and responsible, but that's not what would happen. They would, in fact, go buy all kinds of stuff. And it would, in fact, spur the economy, especially housing, which is already doing really well if you're outside of the city. So reread the book. It's an amazing book. It's got so many great lessons. I mean, as I read it again, I was like, why did I wait 30 years to read this again? I mean, it's a book that you should read every couple of years. But when you're reading that book, remember, which category do you fit into? Are you an employee? Are you a person that works for somebody else? Or are you a person that owns the business? If you're a person that works with somebody else, for somebody else, then the Dave Ramsey approach, absolutely. No debt, blah, 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 blah. But if you're an entrepreneur, then those things are different. As an entrepreneur, you have to have debt. You have to, especially right now, because it's free money. Debt's so cheap, so you have to use that leverage in order to get yourself where you want to go. So, reason that I was late is I just saw that one of my Tony Robbins family, a guy who's a little bit younger than me, died. I heard that he was kind of sick. He'd had some ongoing health issues, but had been doing great for years. The health issues started when he was a kid, but he had managed them forever. He got COVID, and the underlying health issues just exploded, and he died, 52 years old. So let's remember, folks, every day matters. Every day is precious. Every day matters, and make them all count. Tracy, good morning, dear. It's cold and really snowy outside, so be careful. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.